It's all your fault. If you hadn't meddled, I will never forgive you. Go to hell." The person who had been smug just a moment ago was now furiously yelling at me. Even though it was all their fault, they blamed me. Embarrassingly, that person was my mother-in-law, Benedetta. She lay on the floor, crying, but it was too late. I'll return those words right back to her. Go to hell. My name is Nancy, a 35-year-old company employee. I live with my husband Milford and our 4-year-old son Zeke. I haven't had much luck with meeting someone. I meant it as a light joke at work, but my boss, the department head, suggested, "How about my son? He's about your age and has a mild-mannered personality. Why don't you meet him once?" And that's how I met my now husband, Milford. We hit it off, got married the next year, and had our son Zeke the year after. Everything went smoothly. Life is so unpredictable. But, of course, not everything in life goes well. They say marriage isn't just about the couple. Dealing with family can be tough. Initially, at family gatherings, my detestable mother-in-law Benedetta would say, "Nancy, we're running low on drinks over here. Sorry, she's not very competent." She made me work even harder while I was busy preparing the meal. Do it yourself. And then there was another person. "Come on, hurry up, I'm hungry," said Milford's sister, my sister-in-law, Eleanor. She resembled Benedetta in looks and personality, but not at all like my husband. She's been job-hopping, 10 years younger than my husband. "Eleanor, could you help out a bit?" I asked with a wry smile. "Ew, why? You're his wife, right? That's your job. Besides, I'm busy," she grumbled, sitting down to play games on her mobile phone. Over 20 years old, and yet she talks like a child. I disliked her too. Benedetta never said anything to Eleanor, no matter how much she complained to me. A relative, fed up, said, "Hey, Nancy's pregnant, right? Make Eleanor help too." At that time, I was pregnant with Zeke, but Benedetta, unfazed, said, "Well, she's pregnant, but she's not showing yet." And Nancy volunteered. "Eleanor's tired from dealing with her mean boss every day. I'll take care of it." "Oh, my leg. Ouch." I mean, that's not the point. What's with her suddenly? Meanwhile, Eleanor, perhaps scoring high in her game, was oblivious to us and posing victoriously next to Benedetta. When Benedetta's leg was mentioned, the relatives always fell silent. There's a reason for that. As I was doing the dishes in the kitchen, Cheryl, Gwen's sister and my husband's aunt, came up from behind and said, "I'm sorry about earlier. I shouldn't have said that." "Oh no, not at all. I was actually happy earlier," I responded with a smile. This countryside, I tell you, hosting and everything else, it's all on the women. The men should help out a bit too. While she complained, she would sometimes joke, and I liked this aunt-in-law. She's a bright person and always takes charge at family gatherings. Although I got along with everyone, my relationship with Benedetta was quite poor. Milford's late mom was such a nice person, but why on earth did he remarry someone like her? Cheryl said this and sighed deeply. In fact, Milford and Benedetta are not blood related. Milford's biological mother passed away due to illness around the time he started elementary school. And around at the age of 11, Gwen remarried, and that partner was Benedetta. The story of Gwen and Benedetta's meeting is tied to why Benedetta has a bad leg. I don't know all the details, but it seems Gwen once had a car accident and Benedetta was the other party. At that time, Benedetta suffered a leg injury that required stitches, and it seems that the accident left her with lasting issues. How they ended up getting married is unclear, but Eleanor was born soon after they married. I shouldn't really say, but life is full of unexpected connections. As for Milford and Benedetta, their relationship isn't good either. In fact, I hardly ever see them talk. My husband Milford is a man of few words but very kind. He is attentive to the little things, and I'm always grateful for his help. When we visit his family, he talks a lot with Gwyn, but hardly ever with Benedetta and Eleanor. I don't think of her as a mom. I don't know what she told my sister, but she seems to dislike me, he once said. I asked if he wanted to get along better, but the answer was no. He said with a wry smile, I don't have many good memories. As a child, I forced a smile for Dad's sake. I didn't ask further after that. When I first met Benedetta and the others, she barely participated in the conversation, finished her meal quickly, and left with Eleanor, saying, You can do as you please from here. What a rude person. My first impression of Benedetta and the others was the worst. Benedetta, uninterested in her son, naturally didn't dote on my son Zeke either, and never even held him since he was born. I didn't want her touching my son anyway, so it didn't bother me. The only thing that troubled me was seeing Zeke ask sadly, Does Grandma hate me? All my husband could do was apologize when he saw our son like that. Gwyn, seeing this, once said to Benedetta, Can't you change your attitude? We're family after all. But she replied, To be clear, my family is only you and Eleanor. I'd like to get along, but Milford has been glaring at me since he was young. It's scary. And it seems she couldn't accept me and Zeke as family either. Also Nancy, she's cozying up to Cheryl, whom I dislike. She always picks fights with Eleanor. I don't want to get along with her. My good relationship with Cheryl also seems to be a point of contention. As for Eleanor, I only scolded her at family gatherings for her slothful behavior. Her resentment towards me is quite misplaced. What's that about makes no sense. Because of Benedetta's attitude, we only saw her and Eleanor at family gatherings, New Year's celebrations, funerals, and weddings. Since Gwyn is my husband's boss, and they seem to be in regular contact, I had resigned myself to this relationship continuing as is. However, an unexpected event was about to change this dynamic. It happened just after Gwyn retired, saying he was looking forward to relaxing. Gwyn was diagnosed with cancer. I had been feeling off lately, but cancer, this is tough, he said weakly, smiling on the hospital bed. The cancer had progressed considerably and had spread to other organs. The doctor said he had about a year left and our family couldn't stop crying. We should make sure Gwyn has no regrets and let him live his remaining life the way he wants to, I said. My husband nodded, tears in his eyes. A few days later, I received a call from an unexpected person. Hello, Nancy. I have a favor to ask. It was Benedetta, surprisingly. Usually, she's harsh with me, but that day she called with a sickeningly sweet tone. Her request was, since my husband is hospitalized, could you handle bringing his things and doing paperwork? I have a bad leg, you know. Her words infuriated me. I have a job and can't always be there. Aren't you a housewife, Benedetta? And I heard Eleanor quit her job again. Annoyed by my angry response, Benedetta yelled, That's why I'm asking you. You're so unpleasant. Eleanor just hasn't found the right job yet. She's recharging now. But it's obvious that Eleanor's employment issues were her own doing. Her frequent tardiness, leaving early or not returning from breaks on time, led to one incident where a senior employee had to fetch her, only to find her absorbed in a mobile game, saying, Wait a bit longer, I'm at a good part. She was fired for these reasons, but blamed it on her boss pressuring her. Eleanor, in her mid-20s, had a dismal employment history. Sometimes Benedetta would even storm into Eleanor's workplace, demanding to see a manager. I felt sorry for her co-workers. Benedetta's catchphrase was, "Eleanor is delicate, just like me." Every time I heard that, I thought, who's saying that? When I stayed silent on the phone, Benedetta said, "So, you see, I'm so shocked my husband is ill. I'm thinking of taking Eleanor on a trip for a change of scenery. We're leaving tomorrow." I couldn't understand what she was saying. She seemed out of her mind. Huh? A trip? Wait a minute. Just so you know, from now on, you'll handle all the paperwork. Tell Milford too. Bye. She hung up abruptly, and then I couldn't reach her anymore. When I told my husband, he was furious, as expected. The next day, we went to his parents' house, but nobody was there. It seemed Benedetta and Eleanor had indeed gone on their trip. Unbelievable! How could they? I'm the type to express my anger quickly, but my husband bottles it up until he explodes. When such people get angry, it's actually quite scary. My husband sighed. "Anyway, let's take that things to him. I know where most of it is." Their house was large, with individual rooms and even a study exclusively for Gwyn. As we gathered his things, we found something in Gwyn's room that shouldn't have been there. We were both chilled to the bone when we saw it. Gwyn's surgery was successful, but the prognosis wasn't good. Benedetta and Eleanor, taking advantage of his absence, did as they pleased. When they occasionally showed up at the hospital room, Benedetta only talked about money, and Eleanor was glued to her mobile phone. There were times when Gwyn was well enough for a temporary discharge, but instead of returning to his house, he said, looking guilty, "Milford, Nancy, can I stay with you? I want to see Zeke." It broke my heart to see him like that, and I replied, "Of course, Zeke has been wanting to see his grandpa." After several hospital stays, Gwyn peacefully passed away in our care and that of his brother and sister-in-law. After Gwyn fell ill, my husband was able to open up more, deepening their relationship. Gwyn wished for a family-only funeral, so we planned it that way. My husband was to lead the funeral, while Benedetta declined, citing her painful leg. Gwyn had done so much for us. He brought my husband into my life, and because of that, we had Zeke. I couldn't get along with Benedetta and Eleanor, but even without them, my gratitude was immense. As I was lost in thought, Benedetta beckoned me over. I approached, wondering what it was about, and then she said, "Nancy, can you leave right after the funeral? It will turn to money talk, and you'd be out of place, right?" I couldn't believe she would say something so outrageous at a time like this. I reached my limit with this woman who only talked about money. "Don't joke. Money, money, money. Is that all you think about? You should be ashamed. Gwyn would be." I shouted so loudly it echoed throughout the building. Benedetta, taken aback, said, "Keep your voice down." But I didn't care. Relatives who heard the commotion came to see what was happening. My husband soon joined me. "She's telling me to leave. It's too much." "What? I didn't say she had to leave right now. Just when it comes to money matters. She's just Milford's wife, a stranger." Benedetta tried to justify. Of course, no one agreed with her. Benedetta and Eleanor were already disliked by the family, but they tolerated them because Gwyn never said anything. Cheryl, red in the face, confronted Benedetta. "What do you think of my brother? You approached him because of your leg injury, but is that leg really bad?" I had always doubted Benedetta's leg injury, and probably so did others. Benedetta loved traveling and shopping, always light on her feet. It was clear she used her supposed disability to avoid responsibilities. Gwyn must have known, but he stayed with her for his son's sake. Dad, I always disliked her, but I forced a smile as a kid because you chose her. My husband had shared this with Gwyn during his illness. Gwyn looked deeply saddened by these words. You smiled, so I thought, I'm sorry, Milford. They were both men of few words. Maybe if they had faced each other sooner, the future could have been different. But the worst part was this woman in front of me taking advantage of Gwyn's kindness. My heart was full of loathing with Benedetta. If Nancy leaves, then I'm leaving too. My family is Nancy and Zeke. Well, I can't, being the representative. My husband then asked the funeral staff if there was another venue available. The staff looked troubled. Meanwhile, relatives glared at Benedetta. Feeling uncomfortable, she played the victim. I'm the victim here. Suddenly, my husband brings a mistress, tells me she's marrying Milford, then cheats on me with her. Benedetta's implication that I was the mistress almost made me lunge at her. Then, my usually calm husband burst out. Enough is enough! Don't lump me in with you! You've been betraying Dad all along! His anger finally exploded. Benedetta, realizing he might be onto something, looked panicked. Me and Dad are both blood type O, while you and Eleanor are type A. That's what we always heard, but I found your blood test result in Daddy's study. It says your blood type is O. Someone in the family whispered, Isn't that odd? 2 O types can only produce O type offspring, right? It's some mistake. I'm A type, no doubt. Stop making false accusations here. Benedetta still tried to maintain some composure. This is the health check report I found, along with a DNA test for Dad and Eleanor. It says a parental relationship is almost impossible. When my husband and I found these 2 documents, we were chilled. Gwyn had known everything. The DNA test was dated a few years back. Perhaps Gwyn found the blood test result and suspected something. Even then, he continued living with Benedetta and Eleanor. Maybe it was because of years of attachment. But it seems he finally saw through Benedetta and Eleanor's awful behavior after falling ill. Eleanor, who had been playing games and listening to our conversations, said, Busted, ha ha ha. But does it even matter now? We've lived together for years, that's what counts. Emboldened perhaps by her only ally, Benedetta declared, Right, I'm his wife. I'll take what's mine and leave this house with Eleanor. Oh, and Milford, we're selling the house, just so you know. You, this fraud, don't mess with us. I'll report you to the police. Cheryl's face turned red with rage, and several relatives had to hold her back. Seeing this, Benedetta sneered, The man's already dead. Don't make a scene, Cheryl. I couldn't help but laugh at Benedetta's triumphant smirk. She glared at me. Laughing at a time like this, are you insane? To the furious Benedetta, I revealed a fact. You've been talking about money this whole time. What money are you referring to? Benedetta replied, Huh? That's life insurance, money from selling the house, just money that's none of your business. Ah, I see. But that's also none of your business, right? Since you left everything to us, we've taken care of the paperwork. I said this with the brightest smile. For a moment, Benedetta looked confused, then realizing the money was involved, her face went pale. You didn't? Yes, just as you guessed. The life insurance beneficiary and the house's ownership are now in Milford's name, not yours. Of course, it was all decided after discussing it with Gwyn. Upon hearing my words, Benedetta collapsed on her knees, crying in despair. Then she glared at me and shouted, "It's all your fault! If you hadn't meddled, I will never forgive you! Go to hell!" I replied with a smile, "What are you talking about? I'll return those words right back to you." One after another, relatives told Benedetta and Eleanor to leave, to get out quickly. Feeling extremely uncomfortable, they hurried away. Their escape was surprisingly swift for someone supposedly with a bad leg. We apologized to the funeral home staff and finally were able to proceed with Gwyn's funeral. Afterward, we discovered that they had been spending Gwyn's money extravagantly, thinking they would inherit a significant amount. Gwyn's savings were nearly gone, but we had anticipated that. Eleanor's biological father turned out to be an awful man, having an affair with Benedetta even before she married Gwyn. Benedetta continued the relationship even after marrying Gwyn. It seems Eleanor occasionally met her biological father, and they mocked Gwyn together, a despicable family. After Gwyn's death, they shamelessly tried to stay in the house. When my husband threatened to consult the police and lawyers, they disappeared the next day. My husband changed the locks immediately and renovated the old house into a rental property. We quickly found tenants, and now the rental income slightly increases our living expenses. Months later, I heard from a relative that they saw Benedetta and Eleanor looking shabby, being led away by some intimidating and unsavory characters. I doubt they can return to a normal life now, but they are strangers to us. It has nothing to do with our family. Since then, my husband got a transfer and we moved. He works less overtime now and is so happy to spend more time with our son Zeke. "Zeke, don't keep your worries to yourself. Talk to Dad about anything. I'll be here for you," he often says. Zeke seems pleased with this, responding cheerfully, "Got it." We cherish our family time and look forward to spending many happy days with our beloved family.